On today's show, what is the market value for Rocket center Christian Wood? 3 possible trade destinations ahead of the NBA draft for the Rockets big man. And how are the Houston Rockets internally evaluating Daishen Nix, and what is his role moving forward within this Houston Rockets franchise? All of that and more coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
With the second pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Jalen Green.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep getting better every day. I'm going to keep perfecting my craft. And every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian, also host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, and the founder of ClutchCityControlRoom.com. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin. The show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. As always, appreciate you for making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. Free and available on all platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, wherever you get your podcasts, you can check us out there. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate all the comments. The comments are incredible. Keep commenting on all the videos. It means the world to me. You are my favorite person in existence if you comment on the videos. Now, for today's show, we're going to actually dive into some recent work, some reporting, some speculation by both of the Rockets in-house beat writer. I can't say in-house beat writers. Beat writers. One, Kelly Iko of The Athletic, and then Jonathan Fagan of the Houston Chronicle. First, from Kelly Iko, we'll take a look at the market value of Rocket center Christian Wood. 3 proposed trades by Kelly Iko as far as what the market value could look like for the Rockets, a big man. Then we'll shift gears and take a look at Daishen Nix and how the Rockets are kind of potentially internally evaluating him and his talent level and his role moving forward with this Rockets organization. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Let's dive into the proposed trades here for Christian Wood by the Athletic's Kelly Iko, and we'll just dive straight in here because this is, the Rockets beat writers are the most plugged in individuals when it comes to the organization. So these trades should be rooted in some semblance of, understanding of what the market value across the league looks like for Christian Wood, and the fact that the Rockets are in an interesting position with Christian Wood, given the fact that they are facing a potential logjam in the front court, depending on what they do with the number 3 overall pick in this year's NBA draft, and any chance to be able to move up and, get another lottery pick, especially in a draft where there's some very clear-cut tier 2 talent in the lottery before pick number 17 is available on the board for the Houston Rockets, would be an absolute win. So let's take a look at trade number 1 here. And this is a trade that we actually, have suggested quite a bit, honestly, here on Locked On Rockets ahead of the NBA trade deadline before last NBA trade deadline. Let's go with that. And it's Christian Wood and the number 17 overall pick, a variation of this trade, I should say. Christian Wood and this number 17 overall draft pick to the Charlotte Hornets for Mason Plumlee, PJ Washington, and the number 13 overall pick. Look, the Charlotte Hornets are a team that's been rumored to have a lot of interest in Christian Wood previously. Makes a lot of sense being able to pair Christian Wood with LaMelo Ball, a very dangerous pick and roll ball handler, somebody that can maybe get the most out of Christian Wood as a pick and roll or pick and pop big man. We've seen Christian Wood not really fulfill that half of his role here in Houston. He's basically turned into exclusively a pick and pop big man or an isolation big man who you give the rock to and he goes and gets his own buckets. Maybe LaMelo Ball can be the piece. Maybe a change of scenery can be the thing that unlocks the other half of Christian Wood's game. Now, from the Rockets' perspective here, I actually don't like the value of this trade. You're talking about trading a talented player in Christian Wood just to move up 4 spots in this year's draft. And I genuinely don't think that the quality of prospect from 17 to 13 is going to make that much of a difference. I feel like some of the names that would still be there at 17. Like, you're really not going to make that much of a difference jumping up just 4 spaces in this year's NBA draft. Yeah, you take a bit of a flyer on a guy like PJ Washington, and you think that maybe he could be of service for the Rockets, but you still kind of come into the issue of PJ Washington is, yeah, he's a bit more of a wing, but there's still a bit of a log jam there if you're the Houston Rockets, in the sense of whoever you pick up at 17, if you take another wing, you've still got Jae'Sean Tate on the roster, you've still got KJ Martin on the roster, you're going to draft a big who's going to take up a lot of minutes at that 4 spot, potentially, again, a name that's going to be on the wing or operating on the wing a bit. You've still got Jalen Green. You've still got minutes for Josh Christopher. Like, where would you find spot minutes for a guy like PJ Washington? So to me, the value is minimal here in this first trade for the Rockets to just move up 4 spots on the board. Now, if they really feel like they can get a prospect that is going to be a difference maker, that is going to be more valuable at pick number 13 than at pick number 17, then I'd consider it. But at the end of the day, I think Christian Wood can net you a pick by himself without having to throw in pick number 17. Now, if you're talking about moving up further into the lottery like we did last week, moving up to, say, pick number 7 for Christian Wood, then I'd become a bit more aggressive about what you're willing to deal with Christian Wood if you're willing to package 17 and Christian Wood to move up into, say, the top 10 of the lottery. That becomes a lot more of an attractive trade offer. But this very first trade, I'm honestly not a big fan of it from the Rockets' perspective. I don't think it accomplishes its goal of packaging Christian Wood to bring back either a future draft capital or something in this current NBA draft to really get the gears rolling on something that the Rockets would be interested in from their perspective. So for me, I'm going to pass on this trade if I were the Houston Rockets. If the Charlotte Hornets want to entertain the same trade, but without including pick number 17, then if I were the Rockets, I'd be very much interested in it, because then you can entertain the idea of packaging pick 17 and pick 13 if you're the Houston Rockets to move even further up in the draft this season to get, again, one of those clear-cut tier 2 prospects that's probably going to be off the board before pick number 13 would make its way around the clock. So coming up, want to get to the next pair of trades on this recent Rockets article by Kelly Iko, kind of gauging the market value for Christian Wood. We'll also be talking about Daishen Nix and his role within this Rockets organization moving forward, how the Rockets value him as a prospect, as a piece moving forward. But first, a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline, because our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. Find the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs with the finals right around the corner, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting, the playoffs, esports, the NBA draft, and more. And speaking of the NBA draft, right now you can take a look at BetOnline for who is the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 overall selection in this year's NBA draft. You got Jabari Smith Jr. at -230 to go number 1 overall in this year's NBA draft. Chet Holmgren at +150, and then Paolo Banchero bringing up the rear at +800. So for all of that and more, head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And continuing on here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, appreciate you making Locked on Rockets your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, be sure to go check out the Locked on NBA Big Board podcast. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin, giving fans an in-depth look at the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast, wherever you get this podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, everywhere. Now, let's continue on here, evaluating kind of Christian Wood's market value here. And the second suggested trade here that we have on our docket is Christian Wood and the number 17 pick, Milwaukee's 2023 first-round pick, and Houston's 2024 second-round pick to the New York Knicks for Cam Reddish, Nerlens Noel, and the number 11 pick. Now, on the surface here, I will say I know a lot of Rockets fans are very excited about the possibility of throwing Cam Reddish on the wing next to Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr. There were a lot of Rockets fans that wanted Cam Reddish this past NBA trade deadline and were, upset that the Rockets didn't make a move for him at the deadline, considering that it felt like the New York Knicks picked him up for peanuts, honestly. But first off, with the permutation here that's suggested, not a big fan of it. I'll start picking it apart here in a second. I will say, I think that the Knicks are in a very precarious situation where they need talent to surround, put around RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. They were kind of that flash in the pan success story a season ago, and very disappointing, results this year if you're the New York Knicks, and they're an organization that has shown, at least historically, an inability to be patient and wanting to find that instantaneous success. And maybe trading for Christian Wood would be that level of instantaneous success, especially when you consider the skill set that he has to be able to pair around, again, guys like Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. Mitchell Robinson could be leaving the Knicks in free agency, and that could open up a spot in the Knicks rotation for Christian Wood. Now, as far as the cost here to trade up to just pick number 11, again, you're moving up 6 spots, and the suggested trade package here would include the Milwaukee 2023 first-round draft pick, which I would absolutely not put on the table in almost any deal at this point, because the Milwaukee Bucks are a team that, one major injury to any of their big three, especially though, if you consider Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? If something haywire happens, I'm not wishing injury upon anybody, but you never know how an NBA season could play out. If Giannis were to get injured, that Bucks pick completely unprotected in next year's draft could become a highly coveted asset, or could be something that could convey to the Houston Rockets by way of, a lottery pick that could be, Victor Wembanyama, right? Like I'm like, that's not something you give up lightly. So I would not include that in any possible trade scenario, even if it means moving up in the draft, closer to the higher point of the lottery, where you could be getting, again, some of those tier 2 prospects like a Keegan Murray or a Benedict Mathurin or a Jalen Duren, or even, a Dyson Daniels if he's still on the board, Marjon Beauchamp, who I think will be available closer to pick number 17. Tari Eason is another name that we focused on a lot. Nikola Jovic, again, so many interesting names if you're the Houston Rockets of those tier 2 prospects. But overall, getting Cam Reddish and getting the number 11 pick would be a really nice haul, but I don't think you can realistically include that 2023 pick by way of Milwaukee. If I'm the Rockets, maybe you include one of the future Brooklyn Nets picks, but I would not include the 2023 first rounder from Milwaukee at all. I think that pick is completely off limits, honestly, at this point, until you get into next NBA season and kind of see how the Bucks are performing. And then if it looks like it's going to be a late first, then sure, maybe you deal it around the deadline next season. But right now, I think that pick should be absolutely off limits, because there's too much that could go wrong if you're the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's go to option number 3 here, as far as the suggested trades. And this one, I feel like, has a bit more, is rooted in a bit more of realistic proportions. It's Christian Wood to the San Antonio Spurs for Zach Collins, Romeo Langford, and the number 20 pick in the NBA draft. This one I like a bit more, if only because it allows the Rockets to retain pick number 17. It gives the Rockets maybe the flexibility to package picks number 17 and pick number 20 from the Spurs to move even further up in the draft. I like Romeo Langford, even though he didn't quite work out in Boston. I think there's still potentially something there. He's an interesting prospect if you're the Houston Rockets, young player. Definitely some upside there. Again, didn't quite work out in Boston, but could potentially, be a fit if you're the Houston Rockets, young, exciting core, athletic player, able to get up and down the floor for a big. So there's, something to work with there if you're the Houston Rockets, but again, potential logjam in the front court. So maybe he's just, a throw in at that point. Zach Collins doesn't exactly fit with the Rockets, rebuilding timeline. He's salary matching for Christian Wood in this position. But if you're the Houston Rockets, this is a Rockets organization that didn't want to add more late firsts this past NBA trade deadline. And I know that 20 isn't exactly a late first. It's, end of the middle of the draft. It's a pretty solid quality pick. But if they weren't willing to trade, Eric Gordon or Christian Wood at this past NBA deadline because they didn't like the picks that were being offered back, I don't know if 20 is enough to get it done for Christian Wood. Maybe if they know that they have another trade on the table to be able to package 20 and 17, then they would be more willing to entertain a trade like this with the Spurs to move up a bit further in the draft. But as far as Christian Wood is concerned, these three trades kind of illustrate the fact that the Rockets are in a position where, as far as the market value goes, the market may not be great for Christian Wood this summer. If this is the best, if these are the suggestions that Kelly Iko is coming up with, then this is probably rooted in some semblance of realism as far as what the actual offers are out there potentially for Christian Wood. I would not get my hopes up if you're a Rockets fan at the Rockets being able to trade Christian Wood and coming away with a full-blown lottery pick without also giving up pick number 17. Again, unless you luck into a team like the like the Portland Trailblazers, who are in a position where they have to make decisions about either going all in and trying to win now, alongside their current superstar, or trying to figure out, if they're going to tear it all down and rebuild. There are teams like that in the lottery that the Rockets could potentially be able to take advantage of by way of a trade. But at this point, again, it could be slim pickings as far as a potential trade market for Christian Wood. Now, coming up, I do want to kind of shift gears here and pivot to a young name on the Houston Rockets roster in Daishen Nix and how the organization actually views him and his role moving forward. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, appreciate you making LOR your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, be sure to go check out the Locked On NBA podcast from the first jump of the play-in tournament all the way to the final buzzer, the final possession of the NBA Finals. It's Locked On experts taking you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. I host the Monday show. That's out today. 3 interviews from around the league. Be sure to go check it out wherever you get your podcasts or check it out on YouTube. Another thing you should also check out on YouTube, shout out to the YouTube channel BuzzLight99 at Bugs Busby on Twitter, who put together an incredible Jalen Green highlight mix. You should absolutely go subscribe to his channel. Again, that's BuzzLight99. So BuzzLite 99 on YouTube to go check out that awesome Jalen Green mix. I retweeted it. I shared it on my timeline, but go check out, drop the man a subscription. Great Jalen Green highlight video. Definitely a lot of hype here, kind of in not the dog days of the offseason, but just, some nice Jalen Green hype to get your week started off right. So let's pivot here, talk a little bit about Daishen Nix, because Jonathan Fagan was recently a guest with Dave Hardesty, the OG himself, Clutch Fans, on the Clutch Fans podcast. And the two discussed at one point Daishen Nix and his kind of, role moving forward with this Rockets organization, and how high the organization really is on his skill set, what he brings to the table. And the word choice that Jonathan Fagan chose to use here was really interesting in the sense that the Rockets apparently, are viewing Daishen Nix as another lottery pick this season, right? Like the fact that they are that high on what he brings to the table, which I think, it illustrates a few points here. First of all, it shows that the Rockets plan on making Daishen Nix a part of their rotation next season. If they're viewing him as bringing in another lottery pick this season in conjunction with, whoever they take at number 3, then I think it's almost an absolute given that Daishen Nix will get rotation minutes next season. He will be a part of the Rockets rotation, which I think almost spells the end of Dennis Schroeder in a Rockets jersey, right? I know there was some speculation as to whether or not the Rockets want to bring him back. A lot of the wording around that from Rafael Stone and from the Rockets organization was, yeah, we're interested in, bringing Dennis Schroeder back, and we're happy to have him here, and this, that, and the other thing. And look, they really only need one veteran presence on this team, and that should be Eric Gordon if they're going to keep him around. Now, if they decide to move on from Eric Gordon, then yeah, maybe Dennis Schroeder can have a role with this Rockets team. But if they want Daishen Nix to have adequate reps this next season, I think you got to make him the de facto backup point guard. You have Josh Christopher as your de facto backup 2 guard. And then that's your 4-man guard rotation right there. Is Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Daishen Nix, and Josh Christopher. You sprinkle in some EG, at the 3 spot, but also at the 2 spot, hopefully coming off the bench and not absorbing a bunch of starting minutes in the starter rotation. I really don't want to see Eric Gordon starting again. That's nothing against EG. I'm just ready for the Rockets to really embrace the youth movement and still have EG be there, right? Still have him, have some presence, but just not in the starting lineup. The Rockets need some size out there, right? Start, KJ Martin at the 3 spot, or if Jae'Sean Tate's still here, start Jae'Sean Tate at the 3 spot and have him play his more natural position of the 3 rather than being an undersized 4. I digress here. The wording that Jonathan Fagan used, right? Again, a lottery pick, right? And so if Daishen Nix is being viewed as a lottery pick, and the reasoning, the logic behind this is that the season that Daishen Nix had with the RGV Vipers this past year was fantastic. The numbers that he put up were absolutely absurd. And Fagan made the argument that if Daishen Nix was doing this on the G League Ignite, right? Like if he had come in and if he was 19 years old on the G League Ignite, putting up those numbers and wasn't already, on a 2-way deal or wasn't, on an NBA standard deal, I should say, because the Rockets converted his 2-way deal to a standard contract. If that wasn't the case for Daishen Nix, he would absolutely be a lottery selection in this year's NBA draft. And I can't refute that logic. I think that's actually pretty sound logic. So from the Rockets' perspective, you can view it as if they're walking away with the number 3 selection. They're going to have Daishen Nix, who is playing like a lottery talent when you compare his numbers from this past season with the G League, or with the RGV Vipers in the G League at just 19 years old, right? It's not like he's like 21, 22, 23 putting up these numbers. He's 19 years old putting up those absurd numbers in the G League, and he just never really got a chance to do it at a consistent level with the Rockets this season. And then on top of that, you also have pick number 17, which the Rockets could make their selection there. They could trade up. They could package it, right? There's a lot of options at 17. And then you still got Usman Garuba on top of all of that, who should be viewed, again, maybe not necessarily as a lottery prospect type talent, but at least another first-round draft selection that the Rockets didn't really get to see this past season. So effectively, it's almost like the Rockets have another year where they're going to have 4 first-round draft selection talents potentially coming into the framework at 3, at 17 with Daishen Nix and with Usman Garuba. And again, I really think this illustrates how important Daishen Nix is going to be moving forward for this Rockets organization, how highly they value his skill set, and the fact that, again, he does come across as much more of a natural point guard than Kevin Porter Jr. does, right? Like Daishen Nix's inclination is, he is very much that pass first kind of traditional point guard. And so to be able to hopefully see a bit more of that this next season after the numbers that he put up in the G League, I think it bodes well for this Houston Rockets team. And if Jonathan Fagan, is kind of, going on podcasts and sharing his, his thoughts on his role with this team moving forward and speaking this highly of him, then I think it's, the proof is right there in the pudding that this is something that you can kind of take to the bank, that the organization definitely values Daishen Nix moving forward, and that he's got maybe not a guaranteed spot, but the Rockets really want to see what they have there with him, this next season. And training camp could be, maybe not a make or break thing, but again, that they're very high on the talent that they have with Daishen Nix, and for good reason. He's shown a lot of flashes, and there's a reason that a lot of Rockets fans really wanted to see him get more reps this past season and want to see him stick around for the future. So with that, that's going to do it for today's episode. Be sure, again, to go check out BuzzLight99 on YouTube. Be sure to go check out Locked on NBA on YouTube, all that different stuff. That's going to do it for today's episode. Just some kind of recent reporting, rumors, speculation by the 2 Rockets beat reporters for the team, both Jonathan Fagan and Kelly Iko. As always, appreciate you for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app. Free and available on all platforms. Be on the lookout. Coming up, we're going to be pivoting very hard into draft content here in the coming days and weeks leading up to the NBA draft. We'll have some crossover episodes about potential trade up or trade down scenarios in the NBA draft lottery, how the Rockets could potentially move pick number 3, pick number 17. There's a lot of different stuff that could happen. Nothing is a given at this point. Be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe. How do you feel about the suggested trades for Christian Wood? What do you think Christian Wood's value is? Can the Rockets effectively use him to move up or to acquire another lottery pick in this year's NBA draft? Let me know in the comments. I do read each and every one of those every single day. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.